The auction yard stank of sweat, tobacco, and horse manure. Men shouted numbers into the warm air, hands rising like vultures circling a carcass. Dust drifted in amber sheets across the crowd, catching on the leather coats and stiff hats of ranchers hungry for bargains. Among the livestock pens, where bawling cattle and tethered mules waited, a smaller platform had been built from rough boards. It wasn't for animals. It was for people. The man watching from the edge of the crowd, Duke March, a broad-shouldered rancher of 35, felt his jaw tighten as he saw the next lot shoved forward. A woman no more than 28, thin as a fence rail, her wrists bound with coarse rope. Her dress was torn at the sleeve. Dust clung to her cheek, and behind her, clutching her skirt with both trembling hands, a girl no older than 7 stumbled barefoot onto the platform. The girl's hair was tangled, her lips cracked. But her eyes, God help him, were sharp with hunger and desperation. The auctioneer spat into the dust. 1 woman, 1 girl. Widow and child. Useful for housework, washing, maybe more if you ain't particular. We'll start the bidding at $5. The crowd jeered, some laughing. A man near the front shouted, "She's skin and bones, not worth feed in." Another barked, "Sell the girl separate." The child stiffened, clutching tighter at her mother's skirt. The woman's head dropped in shame. And then soft, so soft it cut through the roar of men, the girl's voice floated out. "Sir, can you feed my mama first?" She wasn't speaking to the auctioneer. She was looking straight into the crowd, straight at Duke. The moment held him still as stone. Her eyes locked his. They weren't begging for herself. They were begging for the woman beside her, who swayed faintly as though she might fall. The men kept laughing, the bidding crawling forward half-heartedly, but Duke moved. He pushed through the crowd, boots grinding the dust. His voice cut across the yard, steady as a rifle shot. $10. The laughter died. Heads turned. The auctioneer blinked. Sold if no higher. Silence. No one matched it. Duke threw down the bills, stepped up to the platform and cut the rope from the woman's wrists with his own knife. Her skin bore raw grooves where the fibers had bitten. She didn't meet his eyes, but the girl did, fierce relief breaking into something wet, trembling, almost joy. Duke knelt, handed the girl half a biscuit from his pocket, then pressed the rest into the woman's palm. She stared at it as though it were gold. "Come," he said simply. His voice left no room for question, and he led them away. The ride back to his ranch was slow. Duke lifted the girl onto his horse and kept the mother walking beside him, though he could see her legs faltered with each mile. The land stretched wide, dry grass whispering in the late afternoon wind, horizon glowing with a copper sun sinking low. Coyotes barked far off. They reached his homestead near dusk. A small cabin of pine boards, a barn leaned with age, corral fences mended with stubborn hands. Smoke drifted from the chimney. Inside, the warmth of a low fire and the smell of beans simmering on the stove wrapped around them. The woman sank onto a chair, the girl climbing into her lap. Duke dished food without ceremony, beans, cornbread, coffee watered down for the child. The woman tried to lift the plate toward her daughter first, but Duke touched her wrist gently, shaking his head. "You eat," he said. Her lips parted, protest caught in her throat. But she obeyed, slow, trembling as though afraid it might be taken back. The cabin stayed quiet except for the crackle of firewood. Duke didn't ask questions. He only watched, noticing how the girl's eyelids grew heavy once her stomach was warm, how the woman's shoulders relaxed by inches though her eyes stayed wary, like a doe expecting the hunter's shot. When the girl finally slept on a folded quilt near the hearth, Duke laid another blanket over her small frame. The woman whispered, voice husky, Why would you spend money on us?" He didn't answer at once. He poured another cup of coffee, leaned against the doorframe, the glow of firelight carving shadows across his face. "Because no one else would," he said simply. Her gaze dropped. She seemed both shamed and steadied by the words. Days unfolded in small, unhurried patterns. Duke worked the stock, mended fence, sawed wood. The woman, her name he learned was Lila, moved about the cabin with quiet diligence, washing, cooking, tending the garden patch. Her daughter, Anna, followed him sometimes, asking questions in a voice that chipped away at his silence. "Do cows get lonely? Why's the sky pink at morning? Did you ever have children, sir?" At that last, Duke had only looked away, jaw tightening. He had no wife, no children. Only graves on a hill where wildflowers grew. It was Anna who laughed again first in that house, chasing chickens in the yard, bare feet flashing. It was Lila who still carried silence like a wound. One evening, as storm clouds gathered purple on the horizon, Duke found her standing by the barn, staring west with her hands twisting in her apron. "They'll come," she murmured. He stilled. "Who?" "My husband's kin. The ones who sold us off. He owed debt. They said I'd pay it." Her voice shook. "If they find us, they'll take me back." Lightning cracked far away. Duke's hand brushed the rifle leaning by the barn door. His voice was iron. "Not while I stand." Her eyes flickered to his, searching, doubting, yet holding a fragile thread of hope. The storm broke at midnight. Rain hammered the roof, wind screaming through chinks in the walls. Duke sat at the table, rifle across his knees, listening. Then hoofbeats. Through the sheets of rain, 3 riders emerged, lantern glow casting their faces into sharp relief. Rough men, whiskey-jawed, one carrying a length of chain. The leader shouted over the storm, "March! You've got what's ours. Send the woman out." Anna stirred, whimpering in her sleep. Lila pressed her close, fear rigid in her face. Duke stepped into the rain, lantern light catching the hard lines of his jaw. "She's not yours," he said. The man spat. "Debt says otherwise." Thunder shook the sky. The other 2 dismounted, hands twitching toward guns. For a moment, time thinned, rain, breath, heartbeat. Then the first man drew. The crack of Duke's rifle split the storm. The man staggered, fell into the mud. Chaos erupted, gunfire flashing, horses screaming. Duke moved like stone come alive, reloading, firing, each shot measured. One man fell. The last turned, tried to mount, but Lila herself had stepped from the cabin door. Her hands trembled, but she held Duke's old pistol, and her shot rang true. Silence fell, broken only by the drumming rain. Lila's breath hitched. The pistol slipped from her hand. Duke caught her as she swayed, steadying her shoulders. Inside, Anna blinked awake, eyes wide. Duke crouched, pulling the girl into his arms, speaking low against her hair. "You're safe. Both of you." When dawn came, the storm had passed. The land smelled of wet earth, sky washed clean to a pale blue. Duke buried the dead men on the far ridge without ceremony. When he returned, he found Lila and Anna waiting on the porch, the girl clutching her mother's hand. Lila's eyes met his, no longer only fearful but steady, lit with something new, trust. She spoke softly. "You gave us food. A roof. Your name wasn't asked, but you gave it anyway. I don't know what tomorrow holds, but thank you." Duke touched the brim of his hat, silent. Words were never his gift. But when Anna reached for his hand, small and sure, he let her fingers twine into his calloused palm. The sun rose higher, pouring gold across the valley. The ranch stood quiet, safe for now. And for the first time in years, Duke March felt his house was no longer empty. The last shot lingers. The 3 of them on the porch, the child between them, dawn spilling across the wet earth like a promise. And you, listening by firelight, before you go, click on the story waiting on your screen. It's even more stirring than this one, and I know it will stay with you. Go on, friend. I'll be waiting there.